Good morning. Are we seeing yet another example of social media being completely out of control, people on it being irresponsible, and have the authorities got to send a message? The Ulster Unionist leader, Doug Beattie, has called for police to do more to clamp down on those using social media to speculate on the allegations that have been made against Sir Jeffrey Donaldson. Allegations that he said he will contest. Strenuously contest. Sir Jeffrey, as we know, stood down as the DUP leader and was suspended by the party last week after being charged with rape and other historical sexual offences. He says he will strenuously contest those charges. Now, the PSNI told the Nolan Show that they are reminding the public that speculation is unhelpful and might have a negative impact on a criminal justice process. Now, just even look at that wording. The police saying speculation is unhelpful. Does it go a lot further than that? Both in the Donaldson case and any other case where justice and our judicial system and the right to a fair trial and the protection of complainants is vital. And the police say speculation is unhelpful. How about unlawful? How about you'll get a knock on the door if you do this? Now, Northern Ireland's Attorney General, Brenda King, also issued a statement calling for the public and media to exercise caution around commentary, online or otherwise. It didn't refer to the Sir Jeffrey Donaldson case directly, but it warned that they risk being in contempt of court if they did not stick to the rules. Now, people are breaking the rules. Therefore, people are breaking the law. Are the authorities in Northern Ireland lightweight? Absolutely lightweight if they don't knock on someone's door. Can you just do whatever the hell you want on social media? No matter whether our criminal justice system is at the very heart of being compromised or not. Now, 03030 80 55 55. Yesterday on Nolan, the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, Doug Beattie, said that rather than the PSNI putting out a statement, he was asked should they make an example of people.
Absolutely, Stephen. We should do this, not to protect anybody other than the victims. The victims are the ones that we need to be protecting here. And just because this is high profile, it doesn't mean that those victims are any less victims. And I said this at the start, we have to remember victims right across Northern Ireland here. And if people get away with doing this now, they will do it again. So absolutely, I think the police do need to make an example of people, or whether that's getting a hold of them and giving them a caution. I don't know. I'm not going to be prescriptive on what that should be, but I certainly think they should be doing more than putting out a statement. They need to cut this, and they need to cut this out pretty quickly.
You think if you're speeding down the road and the police blue lights pull you over, they don't knock your window and say, listen, that's unhelpful. You get done. You think if you drop litter on the side of the road, the council don't pull you over and say, listen, that's unhelpful. You get fined. So the question right into the heart of our justice system this morning, on behalf of anybody that comes forward to the police, I'm now not talking about the Sir Jeffrey Donaldson case, on behalf of any complainant, on behalf of anybody who's accused of any crime. Where is the robustness of our authorities? Where is their authority in all of this? Or I ask it again, can you just do whatever you want on social media these days? 03030 80 55 55. The legal commentator Joshua Rosenberg with us this morning. Explain to us, Joshua, how this is unlawful.
There are two areas really, Stephen. The first is that you can't identify somebody who complains about being the victim of a rape case or a case of sexual abuse. They are entitled to anonymity. The second problem is prejudicing a fair trial by publishing information that would make it harder for defendants to get a fair trial. And that's gone further because these days you don't even necessarily name defendants who are accused of a crime until they have been identified by the police, perhaps identified in court. It's very significant that when this case was first reported, the BBC and everybody else named Sir Jeffrey Donaldson, but they didn't identify the 57-year-old woman who's been charged with aiding and abetting in connection with the alleged offences. That, I think, is partly to do with privacy laws, certainly in England and Wales, but obviously everything published in Northern Ireland online can be seen in the rest of the United Kingdom. And they date back about 6 years to a decision involving Sir Cliff Richard, the entertainer, after the BBC filmed through a helicopter pictures of his home near London being raided, and that was seen as an invasion of his privacy, and he sued and was awarded damages.
And what can the punishment be for those people who seem to be getting away with it and shouldn't get away with it, Joshua? What could the punishment be?
It may amount to contempt of court. That could lead to a fine. It could lead to imprisonment. So it is a serious matter. I mean, for years now, we have seen people speculating on social media, haven't we? They've been naming people, they've been putting forward names that may or may not be correct. I have not looked at social media about this case. I don't know what's out there. I dare say there is speculation. There always seems to be speculation. People seem to forget that when they publish something online, they are in the same position as you and I are, Stephen, when we broadcast, when we write things in newspapers, when we write them online. If you publish things, it doesn't matter whether you're an individual at home or an organisation like the BBC, you must comply with the law, and the law has a number of restrictions to protect alleged victims and to protect those who are accused of serious crimes.
And for those people who are breaking the law, Joshua, whose responsibility is it to pursue? Is it the Attorney General for contempt, or is it the police?
Ultimately, it is a matter for the Attorney General. We have seen also warnings from the Public Prosecution Service of Northern Ireland, and I think your previous comment about the involvement of the police is a perfectly fair point. Obviously, the police cannot deal with every single interference with the law, every single breach of the law, particularly online. But if there are some particular allegations that are made against particular individuals in a high-profile case, somebody who's acting perhaps more prominently than others, somebody that they could appropriately choose as a test case, I think it would be reasonable for them to investigate and perhaps announce proceedings, if, as your speaker was saying, if only to warn off other people and just to alert them to what this is all about.
Joshua, thank you very much indeed. The Belfast Telegraph's Alison Morris is with us this morning. Good morning to you, Alison.
Good morning.
Good morning. So we have a situation here. We saw the reporting across the press, Gilly Beattie in Belfast Live, for example, yourself and others, with the responsibility, with the law in mind of how to report this story, these allegations that have been made about Sir Jeffrey Donaldson. And meanwhile, it seems that the authorities cannot or are not stopping wild speculation, untruthful pieces of wording being put on social media. Like, it's crazy.
I mean, I'm sure it was the same right across in every newsroom across, probably will definitely, not just in Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK and across the whole island. On Friday morning, as people grappled with how on earth, we were going to be able to report this case accurately and in the public interest without breaching those very strict contempt laws. And that was something that was debated most of the morning. The DUP statement after the resignation of Jeffrey Donaldson, which identified him as that 61-year-old, in some ways, I suppose, made that reporting inevitable. It would take the way that it did. But up until then, I can assure you I don't think that media lawyers have ever earned a quicker living than they did on, if you go back to Friday morning last week. And I mean, we've even saying in years to come, they'll be teaching this case in media law classes to future journalists to try and explain to them, the delicate tiptoeing that you have to do around these cases to ensure that, first of all, you're reporting them accurately, and again, in the public interest. It's a huge political story, but also that you're being mindful of the fact that this is a criminal case. And as Joshua just said, the complainants in this case have anonymity, not just until the case takes place or is concluded, but for the rest of their life. And in fact, due to new legislation for 25 years after their death. And we must constantly be mindful of that. And, so there's two people here responsible in terms of, I suppose, how this is monitored. The Attorney General, Brenda King, will be keeping an eye on people like you and I to make sure that we are not contempt in the court case with anything we say, because Jeffrey Donaldson has already said he's going to strenuously deny this case. Well, that means then it will go to trial in front of a jury, and a jury has to be chosen, and it has to be made sure that a jury can be chosen, which will not be the easiest task at all, let's face it, but also that nothing is going to contempt that jury trial. So she will be keeping a very close eye on that to make sure that no one in the media breaches that aspect of this case. And then there's the police aspect of it, and the police are responsible for ensuring that those complainants have their anonymity and that it is protected. And, I've covered dozens of these cases, these type of cases over the years. Clearly, this is a very unusual case, but I mean, in terms of allegations of sexual abuse, and they are incredibly difficult cases for all involved. They're difficult to prosecute, they're difficult to defend, they're difficult for witnesses. And the last thing that anyone wants to do is make it even more difficult for those people by using social media, which is seen, it's a form of harassment. If you're taking away the anonymity of someone without their right, they are the only person have the right to waive their anonymity. And that's a decision for them, either in the future. And it's not one that we can take from them. And I have seen absolute, idiots on social media posting things that would not only identify complainants, but have wrongly, in some cases, identified people as being complainants in this case. And without a care in the world, and a lot of those accounts are anonymous, and we know that, and they would have to be tracked, and there's a lot of police work involved in that. But some of them aren't anonymous. They're people who should know better. And, trying to make some sort of gain or point out of something, while at the same time causing great stress to people in something that they really don't know anything about, other than the WhatsApp messages and gossip that they've heard online. And that is really dangerous. That's a policing matter, and police should be keeping a much closer eye on that and making sure. And we discussed this yesterday. For a few of the worst offenders, if there was an example made of those people who continually do this and just think it's their right to do it, and how dare anyone even try and stop them, it would send out a stronger message. And I think it's maybe a good time for us all now to go back again and look at the Gillen report that came after the Belfast rugby rape trial, in terms of how he looked at social media and how that can impact and have a really negative impact on the judicial process when it comes to these type of cases.
John Burrows is a former senior PSNI officer. Morning to you, John.
Morning, Stephen.
Good morning to you. Was it a mistake by the PSNI when they were talking about this in a statement to talk about speculation being unhelpful? Is that language lightweight compared to the relative to the importance of the law being respected here with regards to contempt? It's much more than unhelpful, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think they should be more robust both in their language and in their action. The speculation online has been absolutely dreadful. I mean, openly discussing alleged evidence, openly identifying alleged complainants. And this has been done by some people, not even on anonymous trawl accounts, as Alison has said. So, the PSNI need to be really clear. If you do this, we will come after you, we will investigate you, and we will bring you to justice. Because unless they do make an example of some people, this is going to be continuing. And all of my experience and all of the criminologists out there who write on policing and things will say that it's not the severity of a sentence that actually deters conduct in cases like this. It's the likelihood that you're going to get a knock on the door. And the PSNI need to identify some people, go out, take some action, and then do their own social media on that and say, look, 3 people have been identified, we've knocked their door, reports are with the PPS. This is serious, and you will not get away with it. There needs to be a robust message because in these cases, we cannot stress this is serious, serious stuff. People's lives and liberty are at stake. You've got people's innocence until proven guilty is at stake. You've got the rights and vulnerabilities of complainants at stake. And I'll say the next thing is that those people out there, and sexual offences and domestic violence offences, they're all underreported. And it becomes more difficult for people to report things when they see the Wild West that is out there on social media. So the police need to get more robust and more proactive and actually bring some people to justice.
Is there a role here? I was asking Joshua Rosenberg earlier if there is a role here for the Attorney General, Alison. Obviously, the Attorney General is central to the integrity of the justice system in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I mean, the Attorney General will keep a close eye on in terms of the contempt, and that means in the reporting of this. And, and we all have to be very careful. This is very unusual. You wouldn't have got, a case like this. It hasn't even reached its first court appearance yet. And, we wouldn't have, in cases like this, would have to be very mindful before that court appearance to see the exact word. And also remember, this was a 28-day police charge, which means the file now has to be sent with the PPS, and they have to consider that file. And so things could change. They could change in terms of what the charges are now compared to what the charges are when it gets to court. They could either be reduced, they could be increased. The PPS could ask for further information of the PSNI. There's just still so much to happen in this case. So you have to really be careful that when you're reporting on it, that you make sure that you don't threaten the integrity of that process further down the line. And the Attorney General, that is her job, and that's what she will be keeping her eye out for. Obviously, the police have a different role. Their role is specifically in terms of the naming of the complainants in this case. But, we all, whether we are media or whether you're just a lay person or just an interested observer, we all have to be really mindful of the fact that, especially when it comes to cases of such a sensitive nature, that so much damage can be done. And I think John Burrows, hinted at it there, but there's a lot of charities who are involved in helping victims or people who might be victims of sexual abuse who've been putting out helpline numbers, because when we report on things like this, people who have been through that criminal process maybe in the past, they can be very triggered by it, and they can be very alarmed by it and alarmed by some of the reports. So you tread sensitively. You have to tread sensitively all the time. Social media is like a complete Wild West when it comes to this, because there's people who simply don't care about that. They don't care about anyone else. They just care about how many likes they can get on a particular day, how much attention they can draw towards themselves on social media.
Pathetic.
And
it's
they're
absolutely
also
pathetic.
for political gain and point scoring and all sorts of other things.
030 30 80 55 55. The technology expert, professor in cybersecurity at Ulster University, Kevin Curran, with us this morning. What about the responsibility of the platforms, Kevin, the Facebooks of this world, the Twitters?
But even before the rise of social media, we had websites where comments were placed online. So it goes back to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act in America. So immunity to providers of any interactive computer service, such as social media. Got comments on your website, your class as a distributor be held responsible for anything posted by commenters. But of course, the moment you start to influence any influence over comment, for instance, by hiding or deleting posts, then your class as a publisher. So platforms are very to do any moderation, really, because then they can be seen as then a publisher. So it gives immunity, of course, to them, because there's such a fine balance between free speech, really, and of course, any libel content being hosted. But and again, the EU, it kind of has the same kind of law. Again, and it gives immunity, of course, to any of the platforms, really, so that they're just seen as content distributors, really. So, of course, they do police things like
there's a perverse irony to that, isn't there? So, if they can act, they're reluctant to act, these platforms, because in acting, that pushes them into the realm of being a publisher. So they just allow it to continue to be the Wild West. Is that right?
I mean, we've seen with Twitter again removing a lot of the content moderators again, so very much. But thing, actually, and that's intellectual property. So if you go and post, the latest video of someone and put whatever behind it, it'll be flagged on YouTube, it'll be flagged on Facebook, it'll be whatever, and the content generally, get the payments for that. So they're very good at monitoring anything to do with intellectual property, of course, because there's money involved there. But when it comes to people, saying whatever, they don't really have the onus on them because they are protected.
Thank you for coming on this morning. Teresa next. Teresa, first call of the day. Good morning.
Hello, Stephen. How are you?
Go ahead.
Social media, if it's used properly, is a good thing. But I don't do it because I call it a gossip column. But why did it take a high-profile case like this to highlight the damage it does to other people and families?
Well, we've been talking...
I would wish not highlighted years ago. There's been a lot of cases.
We've been talking about it. Listen, we've been talking about it for many, many years.
Yes.
I've been talking about it. For goodness sake, look, it happened to me. I had some waster.
Oh, I know that, but why?
That was starting petitions against me, telling lies about me, all of that. And I tracked him down, but I had some waster, and Twitter said, I had somebody threaten to shoot me through the head.
Oh,
and Twitter said it did not break their community guidelines.
Yeah,
it is a farce.
It is, but why was it not, as I say, pushed down on years ago? Why was it not clamped down that these things couldn't happen to people who are innocent and are proven guilty?
Teresa, thank you, Brian. Morning, Brian.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you today?
Go ahead, sir. Okay,
that case involving yourself was dreadful, or one of many. The unfortunate thing is, look, I'm glad this conversation's come up. It's about time we discuss this type of thing more. I think people need to be educated a bit more on what they can and can't say. The sort of the Irish thing to gossip, and I suppose the generic thing is to gossip and tittle tattle, but we need to have some boundaries, and I do think programs like yours should try to give some examples of what can and what can't be said in individual cases, and that's part, I think, education is going to play a big part in the future of social media, don't you think?
Well, I think it's a very good point. So for a start, anybody who alleges, in other words, they are a complainant, that they have been the victim of any type of sexual offence, is entitled in law to lifelong anonymity unless they waive it themselves.
Yeah.
So it is unlawful, it is a crime to do anything that would identify a complainant who's alleging that they have been sexually abused in any way. It is a crime.
Yeah, could I make a point?
Yes.
Sorry, I beg your pardon for interrupting you there. Go on ahead. Hello?
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. What I'm suggesting out here is to stop this type of thing happening in the future. I do think within education, we should. For example, you've given an example there, which I'm sure has surprised a lot of people. The lifelong anonymity, which I understand, but I'm sure quite a few people don't realise that what they say is lifelong. So I would like to start at the core here, which is within secondary and higher education. I think a lot of that age group who do tittle-tattle, never mind their parents, don't understand that sticks forever, and they legally could be brought to justice for that forever and a day. So I think this is what I mean about, I don't believe that people understand the lifetime that this type of legislation covers, if you get my meaning.
But it's the carrot and the stick here. You know, what we're fighting for here and within this discussion is we're actually fighting for our justice system and the law to be respected.
Yeah,
this is a criminal. These people going on social media, compromising a court case, it is unlawful if it's determined that they have compromised a court case, and there are rights all round here, rights for the complainants, rights for the accused, and that's why responsible journalists are applying. You know, they're talking to lawyers. They're very fine nuances in any reporting around the Sir Jeffrey Donaldson story, and indeed any story like it. Yeah, and yet you have these people that think that for a couple of clicks, like how pathetic does it get? A couple of clicks or some type of ego that they get a few more followers, that they're going to break the law. 030 30 80 55 55. Can I say thank you to John, to Kevin, to Joshua this morning? Alison, before you go today, in fact, can you stay there 1 second? Just 1 second. I'll come back to you, Alison. I just want to follow up with something with you. Let's get the news, first of all, from the BBC.
Get the news. Make the news. Be the news. This is The Nolan Show.